Hello, welcome back to On the Mic with Mike. I am Mike Jarvis, and in this edition of the program or the podcast, we are focusing on the very important issue of climate change and environmental preservation, environment protection. In Montserrat, the name that comes first to mind whenever these issues come up is that of Veta Wade, not only as an activist for climate change and an activist for environmental protection. Veta also has a professional stance as a consultant in this matter. Hello, Veta. Welcome.
Yes, hello. Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Good. So,
Okay.
as I was saying, just give us a broad overview of your involvement in climate change, environmental protection, and what spurred you to get involved in this.
Right. Well, so as you know, I returned back home in 2011 or so. I wanted to be part of the redevelopment of the island of Montserrat, my home. And when I came back, I remember not many people would go swimming, not many women would go to the ocean. And I spent a lot of time with local fishers, and those fishers took me under the wing and helped to build my ocean awareness and my ocean confidence. So I did a lot of diving with fishermen, fishing in very challenging conditions, and I would call that my boot camp and my awareness for the talent that we have locally, the knowledge that we have locally, and also my awareness about the ocean in our backyard really sort of amped up, and a sort of fire got in my belly that said, we need to get more people in our community to understand the wealth of knowledge that we have under our waters in our ocean backyard, but also what the challenges are globally for our ocean. And at that point of returning back home in 2011, I was very much aware of issues with regards to, pollution and the impact on our oceans. I had been spending some time in Sierra Leone in West Africa, and I had seen where fast fashion and just the overuse and commercialized lifestyle that we have in the West actually creates a challenge for us globally that often ends up washed up in our shores. So I began to make the link between ocean and climate and solutions. And when I came back home, I decided, okay, well, how do I start to piece these things together? And that's where my work with regards to ocean climate work began. And I then started my tour business here, my Fish and Fins nonprofit, and in between all of that, having to survive, utilizing my knowledge and skills to work with other international organizations in terms of how we build solutions around these issues.
That's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And you know what intrigues me?
Mm-hmm.
When you say you returned home 2011, you said, and you're encouraging people, particularly women, to
Mm.
to the beach, like learn to swim. To me, that's almost an alien concept because of the size of Montserrat. The beach was never far away. We had lots of them when I was growing up, but we practically lived in the sea. So what has changed?
Well, I don't know. I could speak to my own life experience. So I grew up in Happy Hill, Salem, and my parents didn't swim. My parents wouldn't even go past their ankles in the water. So I didn't have that experience growing up, as many other people would have that live close to the sea. Maybe those people in Kingsale and some of those people even in Salem. But and also I find that when I return back home, the thing that was being said to me a lot was, I gathered that people prefer to spend time maybe even browsing social media. People spend time browsing other things like that as opposed to really getting out in nature. And then, of course, as women, we're often very self-conscious about all the fancy hairstyles that we have and all the things like that. Like, people don't want to get their hair wet, they don't want to have to exert too much in that type of way. But so for me, I feel like It's just the landscape of life in general, right? People have access to different sort of luxuries and access to, ways of enjoying their hours differently. And for me, I've always been a very outdoorsy person. So um, it was nice for me to be able to enjoy that with local fishers and those people who wanted to join me as well. And people, since I was kid, other people were teaching folks to swim and things like that. But I never had that luxury, and I just wanted to make sure that other people in my community had access to being safe at sea, but also have access to the knowledge that being able to put on fins and snorkel and being able to dive in our coral reefs would allow us. So I don't know. I think there's just, Montserrat has just changed in general. And we now have a different reality. And it's all about positioning ourselves to enjoy and to promote the best of what is Montserrat now and in the future.
Absolutely. I want to come to the more direct climate change, environmental protection issues in a minute. But based on what you just said and from the work that you've been doing, have you seen a sort of a shift? Are you getting more and more people involved and responsive to, shall I say, what you're preaching and what you're actually doing on the ground?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I mean, it's been now 10 years. This year is the 10th year that I've been doing this work, especially with Fish and Fins and the community aspect of reconnecting our folks back to the ocean and understanding more to do with climate. So I find that people are being certainly more responsive. We've seen a lot more people wanting to get involved in the ocean, so many different ocean activities, maybe swimming, diving, or even becoming marine scientists. I've quite a few of children that have come out of our program. I could name maybe about 5 who have actually gone on to explore careers in marine biology. So that shows that we have certainly an interest there, and they are very up close, have grown up, especially those who have been in Fish and Fins throughout the first 5 years of our work, would have grown up really understanding many of those connections. Like, how does what we do on land connect to the ocean? What does it feel like to have increasing water temperatures? They're beginning to understand what ramifications there may be to us having fish go deeper because the waters are cooler at depth, and what the impact might be on fisheries and food security. So I'm seeing that we certainly folks are understanding more, but we have so much work to do, Mike. So much more work to do on building education and awareness. And I believe that really has to happen at a much higher level and be implemented through curriculum design for primary and secondary schools and college here in Montserrat.
Well, you've segued quite seamlessly into sort of the crux of the issue that we're discussing regarding climate change, regarding environmental issues. What is it, or what are there about Montserrat in that respect at the moment which concern you and which encourage you?
With regards to climate change, what concerns me is the general low levels of awareness and access to the information that is necessary for us to make some of the arguments that we need to make, and also to be able to rally our community to understand what are we really facing and what are the solutions that we need to see and create for ourselves. I think that we certainly need to do more of that. I think people are beginning to recognize that something is different. Like farmers would say to me, Vita, what you're saying, girl, is really true. You keep talking about these things because we could see how things are different with regards to, the seasons and the rainy season and what's happening with drought and all these things in terms of the times they would plant their crops. And but yeah, we still have a lot of work to be done there. And when you look at some of the overarching commitments under climate change, one of them is to do with the awareness of people. And so I feel like we have a lot of work to do to be able to get the storytelling up so people can actually tell their stories across sectors. Because climate change issues affect all of us. It's not just about those of us who are in the sea or doing agriculture, but there are also some issues with regards to energy. There's a need to really create social impact in the work we're doing. So everybody should be able to access some aspect of this money, which is to do with building our resilience. And that may mean that some of our storytellers need to be involved. We need to establish funds and access to funds so people can actually create content around climate. So we can incentivize solutions around storytelling. And a lot of these things around storytelling, I'm harping on a little bit more about that, because I feel like oftentimes people in the news are excluded, our artists, our calypsonians, our dancers, and all of that is necessary in terms of how we reach our community in understanding what are some of the real challenges that we face in regards to climate change. Because, you know, we are facing a lot here. And when I say that, it's not for scaremongering or anything like that, but already we see diseases in our coral reefs. We expect that over 2% warming above global levels. We're already at nearly 2% as it is right now in terms of global emissions. The coral reefs will continue to die off. If that happens, then fish stock is going to be more challenged, and so on and so forth. We also have a number of issues. One of the biggest ones is to do with climate migration. So for many islands, they're not going to be able to withstand this as much as Montserrat. And if that is the case, then what does that mean for them? Also, what does that mean for us? From where I'm standing, one of the opportunities here is that we can start to prepare to receive more people. So when we're talking about building population and, you know, the infrastructural changes that are necessary to adapt to climate change, it means making sure that our infrastructure, our buildings, our housing stock, all of these things are ready to perhaps maybe even be a refuge for many of our other Caribbean brothers and sisters. Because from my experience in our Caribbean islands, some of these very low-lying islands may not be able to, in the coming future, be able to sustain the expected rising sea levels alone, not to mention some of the other challenges. So takes me to, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I mean, you're just that's going full flow and you're linking all of the necessary dots there. And because I still want to find out from you what it is at the moment, touching all of those issues that you mentioned about Montserrat, that encourages you. And then I also wanted to go on to ask you, what do you see as examples in Montserrat at the moment of those climate change issues that concern you? But I want to hear about what encourages you first.
Yeah, well, you know, what encourages me most is the fact that I find that Montserrat is, in many ways, a leader in climate resilience. I think that we have been doing a lot of good work, especially with regards to our energy policy. So energy is giving me hope. We have some hurdles to cross, but I believe that Montserrat's journey towards being, you know, fueled by 100% green energy is possible, and probably even more possible and viable and reachable than many other Caribbean islands.
Are you talking there, sorry, are you talking there like about geothermal energy, solar energy, that sort of thing?
Yes. So I'm thinking we have done part of the work already on solar. There is still some work to do. Those wells have been dug, and we do know already that we can create geothermal power. But there does need to be some support to ensure that these things can actually come online and actually benefit the population in general. So I feel like there's a lot more work to be done, but we have actually made some very good starting strides here. And even way back till when I was a child, Montserrat had wind turbines on, and still have wind turbines on, what do you call it, up there at
St. George's Hill. Yeah.
Right? So it just goes to show that we have been ahead of the mark, and we can continue in that way. I think some of the works around hydroponic farming and also thinking about how we can introduce aquaponics. I'm sorry, not aquaponics, but aquaculture in terms of like breeding some of the uh what do you call them? How we breed shrimp
Yes.
and like this. It's also showing how we are able to build resilience and innovate, even with very limited finance and focus in this way. Remember, we're not an island that has like a Ministry of Blue Economy and Climate and Innovation, but within the ecosystem that we do have, we're actually doing quite a lot, and I think it's a reason for us to be proud and to hang, to fly our banner and say, yes, we are resilient. We are resilient people by nature, but we're also doing and making a lot of progress in our programming with regards to climate resilience as well. So, and I think also that our community is to be commended. I think many of us across the community have also been doing a lot in terms of like, raising awareness around the ocean and learning to swim and things like this. I think it can go a step further in terms of making sure that we have a national program for swimming and also marine education. Again, that will begin to create opportunities for resilience and a resilience across our region that we could be proud of as a very small UK overseas territory.
You know
So
something,
these are
Vito?
some things that give me hope.
Yeah, so when you're just ticking all the right boxes as you go along there. You know what I found quite interesting when you spoke about wind energy and the possibilities there and what Montserrat has had before. You spoke about the wind turbine on St. George's Hill. I had a conversation. It's up now with Dr. Joseph Jackman, former chief veterinary officer, been telling me some fantastic tales of Montserrat back in the day. I had no idea that back in the day, long before my time, your time, they used to have a windmill system charging batteries for radios. And also that at one point, when they built Alveston House, the people who owned it, I think he spoke of the gentleman who started the aviation industry in Montserrat. They had a hydro energy system using water to generate electricity, and that was also done at waterworks. So, I mean, the history is there. Is now just, I think, a question of trying to bring that into the modern era.
Yes, absolutely. And again, it's another reason why if we, I don't want us to feel like we lack confidence in this space, right? We're a small island, but we're punching above our weight. And I feel like when we appear in spaces that are discussing the access to finance and the project and so on, it's important for us to tell these stories. I'm happy that you shared that. It's important for us to tell these stories that we're not just, we're not newbies to this type of work. We're not newbies to the issues of sustainability. This is something we have lived and breathed for many years. And so we should bring that story to the forefront, as well as our solutions as well, right? So I'm happy that you shared that. And it's
Also,
important,
Vita,
it's a good example as to why we should have more storytellers, more, when we attend some of these conferences and so on, like it's important for ZJB to be there. It's important for some of our local ecological knowledge holders to be there.
and it's important for you to be there, particularly because what you're telling me here, I know that you've attended and participated in a number of international fora representing Montserrat on this, but I see a space for a Veta Wade in the United Nations climate summits, the COP, what are we now? This year we had COP29. Any experience in that, or could we look forward to see a Veta Wade representing Montserrat in that type of fora, talking about what is being done in Montserrat and accessing some of their resources, financial and otherwise, to make what you're talking about happen in Montserrat?
Well, I hope so. I hope so, Mike. It's one of the directions I hope that my career would lead me. I mean, I came back home with the sole purpose of contributing towards Montserrat's development. I think I have done the lion's share of much of that work in our community and getting our young people involved. And if I'm to think about the next steps are really at high level. I feel like there's a lot of work that we need to start to design at high level. Um, and there's also that approach that the UK government often gives us that I feel like we need to have greater discussion, a real, honest, open discussion around. You might have heard recently that there's been a conversation around, private sector finance into geothermal and so on. For
Mhm.
me, I feel like I see a role in continuing to advocate and share to organizations as well as the UK government that, we have to reject this approach of drip drop investment into Montserrat, and we have to be intentional to create the climate resilience and the justice that we want to see in this community. We can't just be, ticking boxes, but we want to ensure that, Montserrat really has a fair chance to develop and to get the infrastructure that it needs. So I'm hoping that I will have greater platform and space to have these kind of conversations. I mean, my last such engagement was with United Nations Ocean Decade. I was a mentor for their um, Caribbean projects that are aimed towards ensuring that we build solutions, climate ocean solutions in this decade. And what they wanted me to share is how do you sustain long-term projects and how do I work with people who need to do that? And to be honest, Mike, the solution isn't there. The solution isn't there, but as small islands, we must be proud that many of the financial instruments that have been created now came about because small islands like ours were persistent. They're advocates. They built teams of people who can attend COP and other platforms and panels to come up with solutions. And the solutions that exist is because of us. So even though it looks like there's not much happening in terms of the trillion-dollar movements, there are many pieces to this puzzle, and a lot of it we as small islands should be proud of creating, and I would be very happy to play my part to do that. I also find that when I was at SIDS, there was this conference in Antigua that I was asked to attend. It was the Marine Areas Protected Areas Trust that asked me to attend. So not Montserrat government, but I was there. And one of the insights that I took away was that there was some very interesting conversations happening, interesting conversations with fantastic people. But I'm only Veta Wade on a level at the community level. And so it's very difficult for me to say, well, you need to speak to such and such and such and such because I'm not endorsed to be at that level of negotiation or conversation. I realized that Honorable Ruben Mead, I was so happy to see him with the previous Caribbean Development Bank manager, Hygienius Leon, and also some folks from the Public's foundation, because I met those people in SIDS 4 in Antigua. They were fantastic, and I came home raving and telling different people about them. But whose hands do you pass that knowledge to, right? Who then takes that relationship and builds, a platform in which we can create opportunities, right? So there is nobody and no group of people. And I keep saying that though we have some bread and butter issues right now in front of us, an individual and a group of individuals need to come together to deal with some of these future opportunities and challenges. Otherwise, Montserrat will be left behind. So
Well,
I'm hoping that somewhere somebody will see fit to say, okay, well, come on board. But because I'm limited, I see a lot of opportunities for greater impact and to put to just drop a little more equity in the conversation so that we all on more level footing. But I'm limited by what I can do from where I stand now.
Well, you've made a powerful case, an exceptionally powerful case. And all I can say, those who have ears to hear, I hope they're listening. I congratulate you on what you're doing, what you've done, and what you've committed yourself to continue doing. And again, those who are listening, talk to Veta. Thank you very much for taking the time, Veta. I enjoyed it. It was an education. Thank you very much, and keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it. All the best.